Welcome to another episode of Soap Thing Thoughts. Joining me today is Glenn, the luxury shaving hobbyist. Welcome to the Soap Thing Project. How are you?
Doing great. How about you, Ben?
Oh, swell. It's a little after midnight for me, but I work a 3 to 11 shift, so I have the day off today. But even if I didn't, I would be just getting off work. So
I think
these,
those hours would totally confuse me.
yeah, I get it. Whereabouts do you live?
So I live in Media, Pennsylvania, and that's about 30 minutes outside of Philadelphia.
Okay, so you live in southeast to central
It's
east
it's
Pennsylvania?
it's southwest of Philly.
Right.
So we're in the southeastern part of the state. We're also about 25 minutes to the Delaware border as well.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Is like, isn't Maryland or Delaware down there somewhere? So,
Yep. So thank you so much for inviting me, Ben. I really appreciate it.
oh, it's a pleasure to have you. We talked about this a while ago, and then we're finally having you on. So you've
Right?
been,
Life gets in the way.
yeah, it does. So you were on social media for a while, posting really elaborate shave of the day photos and things like that on Facebook and Instagram for a long time, and then you finally got into to YouTube. What compelled you to do that?
So, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, yours included, and I said to myself, that looks kind of easy. Let's see how it works out. So, just had the urge to try it. So, tried it and found out it looks a lot easier than it is. It's
Yeah,
not easy. There's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of editing that goes into it. And until you're happy about it, you could spend a good 2 hours, maybe more sometimes, just getting the thing edited. And then you get it on YouTube, and you look at it and you say, "Uh-oh, nobody's looking at this, video. Why is that?" So I just found it interesting, and I've done it, I guess, about 50 times, give or take, right now, and I find it relaxing and I find it challenging at the same time.
right. No, that's what I learned when I first started getting into this because I bought the the camera, the editing software, and all that. This was before I did my first video, and I did like something like 45 demos of shaving with the camera at different angles, with the audio and the lighting at different settings, and saying and doing things in certain orders, just so that when I got on there and did my first video, I wouldn't look like a doofus. So, and then I learned then it takes a lot of editing. When it comes to, people watching my videos, I got to be honest with you. I mean, I used to get worried about the amount of views that this video got versus that video. But then I started realizing, no matter what video I put out, I get probably at least 150 people who watch it usually. And those 150 people want to be there. So, I mean, I'm not gonna, I know some YouTubers who got upset because they weren't having growth and then they just left. As long as the people who want to be here are getting content that they find entertaining, that's fine with me.
Oh, I fully agree. And it's not really a numbers game. You want to see people watch your videos, enjoy them, and certainly comment on them so you know that they're there. But it's not a numbers game. And if I had 30 people who liked what I did, I would still do it because I like it. And it really counts if I like it, not if somebody else likes it.
Right. Do you ever, before we get into the topic of the day, do you ever go back and like watch previous videos that you've done and just kind of sit there and go, I was really on top of my game when I did that one? Like you have videos that you're really proud of?
I've only watched the straight razor shaves that I've done because I really used YouTube to learn how to straight razor shave. And I looked at the first one I did and I said, oh my goodness, I could have cut my whole face up. And I look at it now and, I'm not there yet, but better. So, I used it really as a learning tool. And I think those are the only ones that I've really watched over and over again.
Right. Yeah, that makes
How
sense. I
about you?
mean,
Have you done that also, Ben?
well, I got to tell you, by the time I get a video uploaded, like I've already probably watched it twice. Well, because I watch it linearly as I'm editing, and then once I get it edited, after it's rendered, I watch it just for good measure, and then when I
Yep.
get it up on YouTube, I watch it again because sometimes I find that the way it sounds as an MP4 and the way it sounds on YouTube are two different things, and so sometimes I have to do audio adjustments. I have to redo the post production and stuff like that. So the long story short, I watch every video I ever make like 5 times. So,
You're ahead
uh,
of me.
uh,
And and I'm still a neophyte at this, really. I'm just using an iPhone. That's all I do at this point. So I really should upgrade my game if I'm going to stay in this.
I don't know because I use Adobe Premiere Elements, and we're not trying to make this into a video editing video. We'll get to the topic here in a second. I use Adobe Premiere Elements and upload all my videos as loose footage onto a computer and use a computer program. But there are some people that have apps on their phone that are almost as good as what I do. So, I mean, you can go that route if you want, but I'm not so sure you'd be gaining much. I mean, all you're gonna do is make it
Well,
you make it more precise, but you're also gonna make it harder on yourself.
well, this has been working for me certainly. I use iMovie actually through Apple, and that's how I edit my stuff.
I mean, if it works, I mean,
Yep,
once you've got to where the app has run its course, then if you still want to make it better, then you have to move on to something else.
agree,
So,
agree.
so the topic you picked, you just kind of handpicked it for me, was talking about shaving brushes. Now we've had brush makers on the show before, but I haven't just sat down with another YouTuber really and dedicated a full episode to brush making. So I guess the first question I have for you is what kind of boxes would a brush maker have to check for you to consider them a very skilled brush maker?
First thing is how artistic their product is. So you want to see something that is unique to that maker. So if I look at a Mojo brush, I know what's unique to Gary. If I look at a Grizzly Bay brush, I know what's unique to that maker as well. So you need some uniqueness. You have to have quality. So a brush can look great, but if it falls apart after 30 shaves, it's not good. So you have to have the quality. You have to have a real close touch on customer service as well. You need to talk to your customers. If you have an issue with the brush, a phone call saying, hey, thanks for buying that brush goes a long way. And there are a few artisans that actually do that out there. So I like that personal touch that an artisan will give his brush and give you.
No, that makes sense. For me personally, uh, if I ask a brush maker to do something very specific and they're able to pull it off, then I would say that they're pretty skilled at what they do. Because it is not easy for anybody to take what's inside my head and make it into a physical medium. Like
Absolutely.
for example, I got a brush right here from Eric Sorrentino that has this fizzy, semi-translucent bottom on it. And I specifically asked for a Pepsi blue top. This was so insanely difficult for him to
And
make.
there it is.
Yeah, but he was able to pull it off. Actually, what this is he made a brush shell and then basically had to bore it out and pour this bubbly stuff into it and then top it off with the blue and then put the knot in it. In fact, this was so difficult that he went kind of on a little bit of a hiatus from making brushes because a couple people asked him for something similar, and I got to where it was just like, okay, it's one of those things where it's like playing Operation, where if you touch the edges one time, the red nose is going to go off. So he spent too much time just like I'm going to screw it up, and so he he had to take a break from it. But another one, I'm going to just I only have like 2 or 3 brushes here just to use for an example, but here's one from Bill Reed over at Shore Shave, and I've been talking very highly about his ability to make sterling green brushes. Like I don't have a tub near me at the moment, but I can tell you this is about as close to sterling green as you're going to get. And this is the second time he's made me a sterling green brush. And this guy knows how to color match, because I've talked to a couple of brush makers and they're like, I don't know if I could nail that color exactly. That's hard, and then I went to Bill Reed and he was just like, sure, I can knock that out for you. Hold my beer and watch this. So I have no idea if he talks that way, but he's one of those guys that just like doesn't give you even a hint that he might not be able to do it. He's just like, yep, let me work on that. And he pulled something together.
I've got the same experience with Alan Long. Have you heard of Alan and the work he does?
I have one of his brushes back in the States.
Incredible work. Let me show you. Bear with me 1 second. I'll find his brush. Yeah. Okay. So I've got 2 brushes that Alan made for me. One was with that sterling green, and he said, "What do you want it to look like?" And I told him, and here it is, green on top, and that is sterling green for sure, and a beautiful orange wood on the bottom. And there's his coin, but what a talented guy Alan is. That's one of the brushes he made for me. Here's another one that I actually saw online and had to have it. Look at the colors in this thing.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's pretty wild.
That is wild.
So,
it kind of reminds me of my Mojo Handcrafts Miami Vice brush.
Yep.
His ability to create this kind of color palette to where it stops at a very abrupt place, like there's a clear line where the color stops. That's hard to do with resin.
Yep. It's amazing how the hobby changes for somebody. You might start in the hobby and get real interested in the soaps and the different scents that you can experience, and then you might move to all the different types of razors that you can use. But the brushes really, really grabbed me. And I think if there was one thing that really drove my passion, it really is the brushes.
Right. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons that we as wet shaving hobbyists tend to collect so many brushes. Like there are some people that don't. There are some people that get themselves a Shave Mac or an AP Shave Co. or a Razor Rock Bruce and call it a day. But I think those of us who like to collect brushes have an appreciation for the fact that it's really the only part of the shave that is handmade and is not a consumable. Because if you think about it, the soap you're going to consume and that's going to go away.
Right.
And almost all razors are machined, usually CNC machined. But these brushes, like here's another Sorrentino. This is a black and gold. This has to be spun by hand. It's spun on a lathe, and it has to be hand drilled out and hand shaped and then hand polished. That's another thing that I think is a mark of a really seriously talented brush maker, is if they do a very, very good polish job. Because more than a few brush makers have told me how insanely difficult that is to get a good polish job on a brush.
Very time consuming as well.
Right.
I think another mark of a good brush maker is mixing mediums and being able to still have it come out beautiful. Taking resin that you've hand poured and taking a piece of wood and getting that stuff thrown together and having it come out as a piece of art. Amazing, just amazing to me.
Yeah, there's examples of that where it has went sideways. Like when Gary was working on my Miami Vice brush. I don't have a picture of it to show everybody, but that brush was all teal and pink and white and silver. And he said the first time he poured it, a huge chunk of it turned brown because the colors mixed together too much, and that was the color that came out of that particular combination. And so he had to redo it. So it is very difficult to make resin in a in a pressure pot or however it is they do it, and have the dyes not commingle basically. So that's it's one thing to make this. This is probably a combination of a couple different colors, but it came out to be one solid color. It's an entirely different thing to make something like this, because you don't want it to look like just this blob. You want it to have some distinctive character and some noticeable break in the color scheme, so that it comes out in a way that's visually striking to people.
I think having those lines be real crisp is such a challenge to create.
Yeah, one thing that I've also noticed a lot of brush makers say is really hard to nail is when you have a two-tone brush like this. Because if you were to take like a magnifying glass to this, you would notice that there's not a perfectly clean break between the blue and the clear. It kind of bleeds together just a little bit, but to the naked eye, you don't notice. Well, to get it so perfect that you don't notice it with the naked eye, that's another one of those things where it's like, I guarantee you they're in their basement making brushes and they're just sweating like, please don't bleed together, please. I don't know, honestly, if I could make complex brushes like that, because after the fourth time of the color going wrong, I'm going to take that thing and throw it across the room. Like I don't have the patience for it.
Yeah. I think it's really a labor of love, because the time it takes to make a brush, and you're going to get paid for it. It's not really a great deal of money when you think about the hours that you invested in getting that brush together. You've got to come up with the resins, you've got to pour it, you've got to let it sit and cook it, you've got to take the block out, get it on the lathe. It could be 10 hours to really, from start to finish, do a brush.
Right. And I think, when you're paying, $60 or $70 for a handle, and then maybe we're not even talking about what the knot cost yet. I'm gonna reveal a little bit of a trade secret, but I'm not singling out any particular brush maker, so I don't think it's gonna matter. I've been told by some high profile brush makers that the cost of materials like the knots that they buy in bulk and the resins and stuff like that. Like the cost of materials it takes to make say something like this is like 15 or $20. If even that. Sometimes it's even cheaper.
Yeah, you're
So
probably right.
so when they're marking brushes up, they're doing that to pay for what they view is adequate labor cost, which so the value of these brushes is in the eye of the beholder. But I've there's been plenty of brushes where um it came out a lot better than I thought it would. And when that happens, I'll tend to tip my brush maker quite a lot because like this one, for example, the I asked for this specific shape and this specific color scheme. I said I want it in this shape, and I want a black and gold brush. And I said I wanted a 22 millimeter, and I don't know if you'll even be able to see this, but I said I wanted the top of the handle to be countersunk or slightly chamfered. It's like little details like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And he came up with the first picture of this, and I was like, whoa, like like you did something so much better than what I had inside my head. And so I'll tend to slip him a little extra money for that. Like, hey, it's like, yeah, it'll be X amount of dollars on PayPal. And then I send the money over to them and they're like, what's all this extra stuff? And I was like, that was for your time. It's like, because I guarantee you that took more time and effort than I could probably understand.
Yeah, it's a complex, time-consuming situation. Have you gone onto the Wolf Whiskers site yet, ever?
I actually own at least 4 Wolf Whiskers brushes.
I've got 2 of them, and it's so much fun just to get on his site and take a look at the colors and come up with the combinations. It could take a person hours and hours just to come up with what you want. That's an exciting part of the whole brush process as well, picking it
Yeah.
out and helping to design it.
Yeah, that is a fun process, but in the back of your mind, some people are probably thinking they're annoying their brush maker with all these questions and all these revisions and stuff like that. And I remember when I had Peter Wolf on the show, I was talking with him, and he mentioned it's just like, yeah, it's not irritating or frustrating when somebody has so many questions or they can't decide what they want. That's just part of the human condition of really enjoying. I guess enjoying is not the right word. That's just part of the human condition of having so many options that are all so beautifully striking, if that makes any sense.
I would think that most artisans would appreciate that, knowing that you're taking the time to go through such detail. Um, it's a good thing. It really is.
You know what I've noticed that a lot of brush makers can't do that I found really interesting? A fake wood resin. Like I've seen it from like Shave Mac and some, other obscure
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
brush makers where you're not quite sure where they got it. But when you ask, a brush maker, can you make something that resembles wood? A lot of them are left scratching their head, like, how would I even do that? Uh, and I've been turned down by every brush maker but one. I'm not going to reveal it right now, but I'm on somebody's waiting list, and they said, I think I can do it. So we'll see if he's able to do that. That remains to be seen. But 99% of the people I've asked if they can do that, they were like, probably not. It's too complicated of a color scheme to really nail that.
Yeah, I think wood, whether it's a resin or a real wood, adds so much warmth to a brush. It's just nice to have. Let me show you a couple, actually.
Yeah, that's cool.
This is a Riva brush that my wife actually got me for a birthday present. Look at the wood on this thing. This is a piece of furniture. It's
Yeah,
gorgeous.
that is crazy. I've looked at their website a couple
Uh,
times, and I'm gonna have to pull the trigger on
gorgeous.
something here soon.
Here's another one. This was a surprise. This was a grizzly bay. Look at the hunk of wood that he was able to get a hold of. This is mahogany, actually.
Right.
Just a gorgeous piece.
I've talked to a couple brush makers that say that wood is actually fairly easy to work with. That it's a bit more malleable and easier to churn and make distinct shapes with it necessarily than resin. It's a bit more brittle, so you got to be more careful. But
The downside is the user really has to take care of that.
right,
Make sure this thing doesn't sit in water. You've got to polish it up with some protective wood polish twice a year. Keep it looking nice. So you've got to do that to maintain that wood.
right. I mean, I guess it depends on the artisan because I've had Smiley on, and he says that he puts like an automotive clear coat on his wood brushes, and he said you can basically do anything you want to it, and it's going to be fine.
That's
But
that's so true. Here's a Smiles brush made out of
skateboard wood,
skateboard wood.
yeah,
Love it, love it. He has these great bore knots that are inexpensive, but I think the best bore out there. Just amazing.
yeah. I'm still trying to get used to bore because this is my only bore brush, and I've found that I've been using it a lot off camera lately, and I've found that the best way for me to use it is to soak it like normal. And then I pretty much have to almost completely dry it out. I have to rub it on a towel to get most of the water out of it. Otherwise, it just floods the soap and it's too watery.
How many times have you used it?
Probably somewhere under 20, somewhere between 15 and 20 times.
So I would say you need about 30 to 40 times for it really to act like you want it to. It takes that much time to really break these things in.
Yeah, I've heard they have a pretty gnarly break-in period.
Yep, yep.
As long as we kind of steered ourselves into that topic, how do you generally break in a Badger brush?
So what I do with the Badger brush is I'll soak it in cold water for about 30 minutes or so. And then I will get that Phoenix Artisan Accoutrements brush soap and just rub it on it real good, make a lather. And I'll do that 3 or 4 times, comb the brush out and let it sit. And I'm done. And I think part of the fun of breaking a brush in is actually using it before it's really broken in. And you can see the brush change as you use it. It's almost like, and this sounds crazy, you almost have a relationship with those brushes as you break them in, as you use them, as they give back to you. It's a relationship more than any other shaving item I can think of.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I definitely have certain brushes where it's like when I pick that up, it's like, okay, I know I have to use this way to make it work for me. Uh, but the only brushes that I can really just use, I can just use and abuse, like use them just any way I want, is like synthetic brushes because you can do pretty much anything with those. But a Badger brush, each one is going to behave a little bit differently, and you kind of got to get to know it. What I
That's
do,
very, very true. That's
what
so true. And what's interesting is I'll use a synthetic sometimes for certain soaps. You really want to use a synthetic brush like sebum. Best lather is with a synthetic brush. A Badger just doesn't seem to work well with it. Um, but with a synthetic, I can't get a relationship with it. Hard to explain, but I don't feel the same way as when I use a Badger or a boar.
let me plant a thought inside your head. It's like driving a car with an automatic transmission. It takes all the fun out of it. You know,
Well,
the Badger brush is the manual transmission. It's the one that you have to work with.
does your brush have soul? I think that would be a good way to think about it too.
Well, I'm gonna dig into that for a minute, but really quickly, I want to talk about how I kind of break in my Badger brushes. Basically, what I do is I will take it out of the box and I will soak it in water basically all day, like 6 to 8 hours. And then by the time that's done, the water is like legitimately brown and it has like sediment in it. So, and then I will pull it out and then I will basically use it like normal. You know, I will use it no differently than if it were a brush that I've had for a couple of years. Uh, Now, admittedly, the first like 3 times I use it, my lather is going to smell funny and the water is going to be discolored. But at that point, it's just like, okay, you know, I
But
would,
see, that's okay. I think that's really okay. I actually like that in the beginning when you're using a new brush.
yeah, it's you get a more direct sense of it evolving, I guess. When it comes to your point about brushes having soul, I guess when I think of that, I think of brushes that have sentimental value. Like the brush I brought with me to London when I was in London for 10 days with my wife, like that's not even particularly close to the best brush I have, but now I can't get rid of it because it has been places with me. So, I mean, maybe that's kind of superficial to people or kind of weird, but I have a couple brushes that are like that are not particularly satisfying to use, but I could never get rid of them because they now have sentimental value.
You know, it's interesting. I will always take war brushes with me when I travel, and I do a lot of traveling. And I had the same thought about think about where that war brush has been with you. And it's true, you know, these things you don't want to give up. They do end up having some memories for you. It's almost like a photo album.
Right. Yeah, you're not wrong. That's an interesting way of thinking about it. Why don't we let's shift a little bit into are there brushes that you don't have that you would want to have that are maybe either coming eventually or maybe are just a little bit too out of reach?
So there are three that come to mind. Walled is a brush I would love to have. Some of the declaration brushes I'd love to have. Um, and there's one more. It'll come to me. Varlet.
Varlet. I've heard good things about Varlet. Um, I know they're expensive, but I've heard that like the attention to detail is like pretty insane. Like they really are like no what's the word I'm looking for? Spared no expense. You know what I mean?
Well, that's true. And I think the other thing I would like about a brush from Varlet is it's a very simple design. It's simple, but it's as fine as you can get. And I find that very appealing.
Yeah, it the longer I'm in this hobby, the more I appreciate simple elegance. Like the loudness of certain shaving soap labels doesn't really do it for me anymore. Like that used to be the ooh shiny thing that sold soaps for me, but now I find myself increasingly more attracted to labels that are just well done in the most elegantly simple way, if that makes any sense.
It does. It does. I mean, after a while, there's so much noise in the hobby. You know, it's like the carnival barker who's telling you to come in and look inside the tent. Do you really need that noise? And I think in the beginning, you're right. You probably did need that noise, but after a while, you appreciate not having the noise.
Yeah, you
You
appreciate not
appreciate that
having the noise.
simplicity.
I
Here's a
like
brush I'm
I I,
sorry.
I like I like your use of the word carnival barker. That's a definitely a use of the English language that you don't hear very often. I got to tell this story, and this probably won't be the last time I tell it. But when I was in London, my wife and I were coming out of a pub, and there was these two British guys kind of playfully arguing with each other, and one called the other an imbecile. I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard that word spoken out loud, like other than in a movie until today.
Yeah.
So I had to laugh at that one. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me pull a few more brushes out that I want to show you.
Okay.
So we're talking about simplicity and the beauty in simplicity
All right.
designs. Trotta, for instance. Love this brush. Beautiful, very simple. Nothing flashy about it, but it's absolutely gorgeous. This dawn color.
Right. I really wanted to like Trotter handcrafts, but I can't get along with their knots. And the dude who makes Trotter handcraft brushes, who I have a lot of respect for, won't won't make his brushes with third party knots, and that's not a knock on him. He's in a way standing behind his product when he does that.
Right,
But
right.
I had a tough time with Trotter handcrafts.
That's interesting. And I happen to like their knots. Have you ever tried um, Umo brushes?
I have not. I've seen them around a lot, but I haven't tried them. I guess the problem I had with Trotter handcrafts is I am slowly growing not to like very dense knots. I tend to like Badger brushes that have low density knots, and so I think he uses knots that a lot of other people use, which are high density knots, and it's again it's not a problem with him. It just didn't work for me, and I think I hadn't realized that until I had already bought one of his brushes, and his sadly just had to be the straw that broke the camel's back, where I decided I'm not into super high density badger knots anymore. Um,
Have you used the Simpson Chubby? Because that is a very, very high density knot.
I have not. Let me tell you what I view as low density. Do you have any QED select brushes?
I do not.
Okay. Um, I'd have to show you and do a comparison. I don't have any more brushes near me, but when you pull it out of the box, you can tell by looking at it that there's not as much hairs packed in there. And like Maggard makes a couple of different knots that are just regular, like two band badger knots that aren't
Mhm.
super high density. And I've found that those tend to give up the lather a lot easier.
There's a knot that Smiles for Miles sold called the Motorboat. That is an incredible knot. It gives up the lather very well, and it's not that super high density brush. Very soft, very nice.
I might have to see if he still got some of those.
Have you tried the Ultralux knot from Rich Man Shaving?
I have. Sadly, I sold all my rich man shaving brushes, not because I had problem with the knots, but because his handles were, it got to where they were just bigger than what I wanted. Like
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
he makes some big handles. Uh and I and it was I didn't want to do that. It kind of really saddened me, but it was a certain point where it was just like it's not comfortable to use. So there's another example of a brush maker that makes phenomenal brushes as far as their ability to use color and put some sparkle in it and make really great shapes, but he prefers to make larger handles, and I sort of evolved to preferring smaller handles, and so it's just a difference of you kind of pick your poison sort of thing. It's a difference of
Sure.
opinion, I guess.
Yep. Mojo makes some pretty large handles now as well. Um, but they do have a smaller one called the Kerrville, which is a pretty neat handle. I'm going to show you one.
While you're grabbing that, I'm going to circle back for a minute to brushes that are a little out of reach for me. I would love to have a turn and shave brush. I got a couple of used ones that I was able to score on on BSTs, but I want to be able to kind of get one that was my idea. You know, the size and the shape and the color was my idea. In declaration grooming, I think what makes declaration grooming out of reach for me is just the price. Now, a lot of people will complain about the price. I mean, I'm personally, though I wouldn't spend that, I don't think it's out of line for him to charge that much, because the fact that they sell out practically instantly means that he must not be charging that much for it. Otherwise, people wouldn't pay it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes when you make a limited amount of a product, and it's not just a brush, it's a shave soap as well. It's almost artificially creating that need for someone to get something if it's limited. And that bothers me, actually. You know,
Yeah,
I
you're
don't know if it's
creating
done on
pent up
purpose,
energy.
but it bothers me to have something that, this is limited. And it's not really limited, but it gets people to talk about it. And I've got to get it now or I'll never get it again. And that bothers me about the hobby in many cases.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, we can have this debate, but I'm not sure if Scott is deliberately creating a pent up demand. I think he gets in there into his shop and turns brushes when he thinks he has the time for it. But I think because he doesn't do it that often, it creates this really high demand that drives the price up. I mean, I think we could all agree if he were making a lot of brushes, he wouldn't have an excuse to charge that kind of money anymore, because there'd be so many of them that it would satisfy the market.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's on purpose with a specific person, but I've seen it more so with soaps than with brushes, actually.
Oh yeah, with soaps, it's a problem where people are stuff will come and go, and certain artisans will take things off the market that maybe aren't even selling that bad, but they want to create more of a pent up energy for it. I mean, I guess that's their prerogative. It seems to be working for them. You said you had a couple more brushes.
So here's a great brush. This is um, a billy goat brush from
I
Australia.
was going to say, aren't those made in Australia?
Yep, I was just taking at the color of this. It's kind of a mango with black. Gorgeous, gorgeous brush. I haven't used it actually, but I just fell in love with this color and just had to have this brush.
How much did that cost you for shipping, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I think the brush was probably maybe high 90s, and to ship it was about 20,
Okay,
which really not that terrible
no, not
considering
too
the
bad
kind
at
of brush
all.
it was. Because this is really, it's a high quality brush, no doubt about it. You can pick up a brush and just feel it, and you know that something good went into this thing.
Right.
I did a count actually of my brushes before we started. I thought I should know, and I surprised myself. I thought I had about 45 brushes, give or take, and it's 80 brushes, and I was shocked that I had that many brushes. I just didn't realize it. And I guess it's the same as soaps. You buy this stuff and you don't realize how much you have. you know when you're out of room, but man, when I counted those brushes and came up with just about 80, I was shocked.
You have more brushes than I do. I've been keeping count. I have 62.
Okay. And that's a good number too.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a right number, but that's my number right now.
Well, I've had this conversation with people before. When I get asked how much is too much, not just shaving products, anything, fragrances, tools, car parts, stuff you got lying in your garage. At what point, like, how much is too much? My answer to that is if you step back and you can see everything you have in that particular category and it makes you uncomfortable, you have too much.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I'm not uncomfortable, which is good, I guess.
Yeah, you're not uncomfortable. I mean, at a surface level, that's what makes it too much. But obviously, if your hobby, whatever it is creating such a spending problem that you can't put food on the table, or you're having trouble paying your bills, then you obviously have too much. But if we take the financial part of it out of the equation, if you look at all the stuff you have, and for some reason or another, it just there's so much of it that it makes you uncomfortable, then I think it's safe to say you've got too much.
I think you're right. I think it might make my friends and relatives uncomfortable when I show them what I've got. So they're uncomfortable. I'm not.
Yeah. But I mean, it's your hobby. I mean,
well, I've actually converted 2 people over to wet shaving, which is more than I thought I would. But a lot of people just still don't get it. And that's okay. I think part of the problem that these artisans are having now is that a lot of people still don't get it. And they're geared up to so much volume to make it pay for them. They're not going to get the volume. They're just not going to get it.
yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to turn this into a pessimistic video about where the market is going. I think I've beat that dead horse over and over and over again. But I do think you're right. Too many artisans are built to service hobbyists. I have actually converted quite a lot of people to wet shaving. I mean, if I had to count, it's got to be somewhere between 20 and 30 just since I started YouTube. The reason I think I've found success in it is because I will give people a razor, a Merkur Progress or a Mula R89 and a tube of Prorazzo and a RazorHawk Bruce and a pack of Gillette Platinums, and I will go stop right there. Do not go any further. Do not do that. Because I think when people say they don't get it, what I think they don't get is the hobby. I think the utilitarian part of wet shaving is lost on them because they're looking through that at this hobby, and it's a new hobby that very few people have, and it's weird to them. Like what do you think about that?
No, I agree. You take a look at a soap maker like Sir Henry's, okay? They're not in it for the hobbyist. They're really in it for the user who just likes to shave with a brush and some real soap and a double-edged razor. So I think they're more looking at the user. And you can tell by the kind of labels that they do, the marketing that they really don't do on YouTube or Facebook. But they're in business and they're servicing just a different market. But you're right. There's a whole nother market out there.
Right. They seem to be doing just fine. And I think part of that is, again, that simple elegance that I'm talking about, but there's a simplicity of their products. They have very few products and the products they do have are very, very simple. I think just to close this out, I think a lot of artisans, if somebody who's not already a wet shaver looks at their stuff, they're going to get overwhelmed.
Agree.
So,
Fully agree.
unless you're somebody like Sterling that sells all sorts of things, then people can kind of, I think people are more comfortable with Sterling because it's Walmart, you know, it's got everything. So, but if you're going to go to like a more focused artisan, uh there people are going to look at that, and unless it's something that just blows them away, you know, with the so that's very visually striking, they're going to look at that and go, what is this?
Yeah, I think Sterling's really interesting. I think they've captured both markets. They've captured the regular wet shaving user, non-hobbyist, but they've got the hobbyist as well. They've done a great job with that.
Right. Well, I think it's about time we bring this to a close. I always ask every guest this question. What do you have for parting words of wisdom to new shavers, seasoned shavers? What have you learned?
I think you have to, for the hobbyist, you've got to realize you're not going to get everything. You can't get everything. And I don't think you have to jump on a soap just because you have to have it because everybody else has it. So I think that's a parting word of wisdom for the hobbyist. You don't have to get everything. Get it if you want it, but don't get it because you think you have to have it to keep up with everybody else. That's not the way to make this hobby work.
To follow up to that, what would you say to people who are new to this?
I think if you're new to it, take it gradually, take it easy, spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos. You learn a lot by doing that, and just take it easy, slowly. Don't be the rabbit in this. Be the turtle, and I think you'll enjoy it a lot better. That's my advice.
All right. I mean, step one to not going down the rabbit hole is recognizing the rabbit hole is there and be like, oh, I think I don't want to go that route just yet. Pace yourself. That's the biggest
That
thing to
is
take
true.
away from this.
Absolutely true.
So, well, Glenn, I want to thank you for coming on to the project. I will put Glenn's card towards the beginning of the video so you can click on that if you want to check him out, or his YouTube channel will be in the description of this video. I want to thank everybody for watching. It's been a pleasure, Glenn. I'm glad to have you on. It's been a while that we've been planning to do this, and this was a really fun conversation.
Ben, had a great time, and hope you get back to the States pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm working on it a little bit longer, but eventually. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, this is Soap Thing telling you, shave like you mean it. Thanks for watching.